Lieutenant Sarah Chen adjusted her tactical gear one final time as the transport shuttle descended through the crimson atmosphere of Kepler 442b. The red dwarf star cast everything in an eerie orange glow that made the alien landscape below look like a scene from humanity's ancient myths about hell. Around her, the 5 other members of SEAL Team Delta 7 performed their own pre-mission rituals, checking weapons and equipment with the practiced efficiency that had kept them alive through dozens of operations across the galaxy. 2 minutes to drop zone, announced Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez from the pilot's seat. His voice carried the calm professionalism that masked the tension they all felt. This wasn't just another extraction mission. The research station on Kepler 442b had gone silent 3 days ago, and the automated distress beacon painted a grim picture of what they might find. Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, their team leader, stood and addressed the group. His weathered face showed no emotion as he spoke. Remember, people, were dealing with an unknown alien threat. The eggheads at Research Station Echo were studying some kind of archaeological site when they went dark. Our job is simple: get in, find survivors, extract them, and get out. Questions? The team shook their heads in unison. They'd been briefed extensively during the 3-day journey from Earth, but the truth was that nobody really knew what had happened down there. The last transmission from Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the station commander, had been fragmentary and terrifying. Something about the sleepers awakening, and they're not fossils, they're eggs. Sarah Chen had earned her call sign, Falcon, during the Titan incident 2 years earlier, when she'd spotted an enemy sniper's nest that had been invisible to everyone else, including their advanced scanning equipment. Her squad mates joked that she had the eyes of a bird of prey, but Sarah knew it was more than just good vision. She had an intuitive ability to see patterns and threats that others missed, a skill that had saved countless lives. As the shuttle touched down on the rocky surface of Kepler 442b, Sarah felt that familiar tingle at the base of her skull. Something was wrong here. The research station looked intact from the outside, its prefabricated modules arranged in a neat cluster around the main laboratory building. But there were no lights, no movement, and the silence over the comm channels was deafening. Delta 7, this is Command. You are cleared for insertion. Remember, we need those researchers alive if possible. The data they collected could be crucial for humanity's expansion into this sector. Morrison's voice crackled through their helmet comms as they disembarked. Copy that, Command. Delta 7 is Oscar Mike. The team moved in standard formation across the alien terrain, their magnetic boots finding purchase on the iron-rich surface. Sarah took point, her enhanced rifle scanning for threats, while her augmented reality display fed her real-time tactical data. The research station loomed ahead, its white walls stark against the rust-colored landscape. It was Rodriguez who first noticed the scratches. Chief, you seeing this? He knelt beside one of the station's support struts, running his gloved finger along deep gouges in the reinforced polymer. These cuts are fresh. Whatever made them had to be strong as hell. Sarah's HUD was already analyzing the marks, but she didn't need the computer's assessment to know they were in trouble. The scratches formed a pattern that made her skin crawl, 3 parallel lines, each one precisely carved, as if something with razor-sharp claws had tested its strength against human engineering and found it wanting. Falcon, what's your read? Morrison's voice was tight with concern. Sarah studied the station's perimeter, her enhanced vision picking up details that the others missed. There were more scratch marks, some high up on the walls where nothing human could have reached. Worse, the main airlock showed signs of having been forced open from the inside. Whatever had killed the researchers, it hadn't come from outside the station. Chief, I'm seeing evidence of breach from multiple vectors, but the damage pattern suggests the threat originated inside the facility. We're not dealing with an external attack. The implications hung heavy in the recycled air of their suits. If something had been contained within the research station and had broken free, then Dr. Hawthorne's fragmentary transmission about eggs took on a terrifying new meaning. As they approached the main entrance, Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up a sound that made her blood freeze. It was soft, barely audible through the thin atmosphere, but unmistakably organic. Something was moving inside the station, and it was big. The airlock cycled with a mechanical whir that seemed impossibly loud in the alien silence. As the inner door opened, the stench hit them even through their filtered air systems, a mixture of decay and something else, something ancient and wrong. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down the corridor, and Sarah's night vision automatically compensated for the dim conditions. "Jesus Christ," whispered Specialist Tommy Kim, the team's demolitions expert. "What happened here?" The walls were covered in the same scratch marks they'd seen outside, but here the damage was more extensive. Sections of the corridor had been torn apart, revealing twisted metal and sparking wiring. Dark stains covered the floor, and Sarah's tactical computer identified them as human blood mixed with an unknown biological substance. Morrison signaled for radio silence as they moved deeper into the facility. Sarah took point, her weapon raised and her senses straining for any sign of movement. The research station had been designed to house 23 scientists and support staff, but so far they'd found no bodies, no survivors, nothing but destruction and that pervasive organic smell. They reached the main laboratory first, and what they found there made even the hardened SEALs pause in shock. The room had been completely transformed. The scientific equipment lay in ruins, but that wasn't what commanded their attention. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in a substance that looked like hardened resin, forming organic curves and tunnels that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Falcon, what's your assessment?" Morrison's voice was barely a whisper over the comm. Sarah studied the alien architecture with growing unease. Her enhanced vision revealed details that the others couldn't see. The resin structures weren't random. They formed a pattern, a design that suggested intelligence and purpose. Whatever had created this hadn't been acting on pure instinct. "This is deliberate construction, Chief. We're looking at some kind of hive or nest structure. The patterns suggest a high level of organization." Petty Officer Lisa Park, their medic and xenobiologist, was scanning the walls with her specialized equipment. "I'm reading massive amounts of unknown organic compounds. This stuff is definitely alive, or at least it was recently. The cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases." As they moved through the transformed laboratory, Sarah noticed something that made her heart race. The resin tunnels all seemed to converge on a single point, the archaeological dig site that had been the focus of the research station's work. According to the mission briefings, Dr. Hawthorne's team had been excavating what they believed to be a fossilized alien settlement when they'd made their final transmission. "Chief, I need to check the dig site. I think that's where this all started." Morrison nodded grimly. "Rodriguez, Kim, establish a perimeter. Park, continue scanning. Falcon and I will investigate the source." The dig site was located in a converted storage module that had been connected to the main lab by a reinforced tunnel. As they approached, Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up that organic sound again, a rhythmic pulsing that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was like listening to the heartbeat of some massive creature. The storage module had been completely hollowed out, its walls dissolved by some kind of acid to create a vast cavern that extended deep into the bedrock of Kepler 442b. Bioluminescent veins ran through the resin-covered walls, providing an eerie blue-green light that pulsed in time with a heartbeat sound. And there, suspended from the ceiling in a web of organic cables, were the missing researchers. "Dear God," Morrison breathed, "are they alive?" Sarah's enhanced vision analyzed the suspended figures. Most were clearly dead, their bodies desiccated and partially dissolved, but 3 of them still showed signs of life, weak heartbeats, minimal brain activity. They were alive, but changed. Dark veins ran beneath their skin, and their eyes had turned completely black. "Chief, we've got a problem," Park's voice crackled over the comm from the main lab. "I'm reading multiple large biomass signatures moving through the resin tunnels. Something big is coming our way." That's when Sarah understood why her instincts had been screaming warnings since they'd landed. The creatures, whatever they were, hadn't killed all the researchers. They'd been converting them, changing them into something else. And now they knew the SEALs were here. The first creature emerged from a tunnel near the ceiling with fluid grace that defied its massive size. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming in the bioluminescent light. It had the general shape of a humanoid, but its proportions were all wrong, too long, too angular, with limbs that bent in impossible directions. Its head was elongated and eyeless, but Sarah could sense its attention focused directly on them with predatory intensity. "Contact!" Morrison shouted, opening fire with his plasma rifle. The superheated bolt struck the creature's exoskeleton, leaving glowing scorch marks but failing to penetrate its armor. More creatures emerged from the tunnels, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of hive intelligence. Sarah counted at least 6 of them, with more shapes moving in the shadows beyond. They were surrounded, and their weapons seemed barely effective against the alien armor. "Fall back to the main lab," Morrison ordered, but Sarah knew it was already too late. These creatures had been planning this ambush, using the converted researchers as bait to lure them deeper into the nest. That's when her enhanced vision caught something that made her blood run cold. One of the suspended researchers, Dr. Hawthorne herself, had opened her black eyes and was staring directly at Sarah. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Instead, Sarah heard the words directly in her mind, transmitted through some kind of telepathic link. "The sleepers have awakened. The hive must grow. You will join us willingly, or you will be taken." Sarah's mind reeled from the psychic contact, but her training kicked in instantly. She grabbed Morrison's arm and pulled him toward the exit as the creatures began their coordinated attack. Their movements were too fluid, too perfect. They were operating as a collective intelligence, each individual serving the needs of the whole. "They're in my head," Sarah shouted over the sound of plasma fire and inhuman shrieks. "They can read our tactics." Morrison processed this information instantly. As team leader, he understood the implications better than anyone. If the creatures could access their thoughts, then conventional military tactics were useless. They needed to do something unpredictable, something that even they didn't plan in advance. "Delta 7, scatter pattern Omega," he commanded. It was a desperation move designed for situations where normal coordination was impossible. Each team member would act independently, using their individual skills to survive and hopefully regroup later. Rodriguez and Kim were already fighting a running battle with 2 of the creatures in the main laboratory. The aliens moved like deadly dancers, their chitinous limbs deflecting plasma bolts while they closed the distance with terrifying speed. Kim managed to detonate a shaped charge that brought down part of the ceiling, temporarily separating them from their pursuers. "The resin conducts electricity," Park shouted from her position behind an overturned lab table. "If we can overload the station's power grid, we might be able to disable their nervous systems." But Sarah was focused on something else entirely. Her enhanced vision had caught a detail that the others missed. The creatures weren't just hunting them. They were herding them, driving them toward specific locations where the resin tunnels converged. The aliens wanted them alive for conversion, which meant they had predictable behavioral patterns. A creature dropped from the ceiling directly in front of her, its razor-sharp limbs sweeping in a complex attack pattern that would have disemboweled a normal human. But Sarah's augmented reflexes kicked in, time seeming to slow as her neural implants accelerated her perception and reaction speed. She rolled under the creature's strike and came up firing her sidearm at point-blank range into what she hoped was a vulnerable joint. The creature shrieked and stumbled, ichor spraying from the wound. It wasn't dead, but it was hurt, which meant they weren't invincible. Sarah filed that information away as she sprinted toward the power control station. "Falcon, what's your plan?" Morrison's voice was tight with pain. Sarah could see him on her tactical display, pinned down by 2 creatures near the main airlock. "I'm going to give them something they're not expecting," she replied, her fingers flying over the power control interface. "Something so stupid that even we don't see it coming." The creatures were closing in from all directions now, their collective intelligence adapting to the SEALs' individual fighting styles with disturbing speed. Sarah could feel the pressure of alien minds pressing against her consciousness, trying to establish the same telepathic link they'd forced on the researchers. But her neural implants weren't just for enhanced reflexes and vision. They included military-grade firewall protocols designed to prevent enemy hacking attempts. As the creatures tried to penetrate her mind, they encountered layer after layer of digital defenses that had never been designed to interface with organic telepathy. The feedback was instantaneous and devastating. The creatures staggered as their collective intelligence collided with human cybersecurity, their perfect coordination dissolving into chaos as conflicting data streams crashed through their shared consciousness. "Now," Sarah shouted, overloading the station's fusion reactor with a series of commands that every safety protocol said was impossible. The power grid exploded in a cascade of electrical fury that raced through the resin-covered walls like liquid lightning. The creature's screams were audible across multiple spectrums as the electrical surge disrupted their nervous systems. They collapsed in convulsing heaps, their chitinous armor smoking from the overload. But Sarah knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The collective intelligence was already adapting, finding new pathways around the damaged neural networks. "Chief, we need to move now. The effect won't last long." Morrison rallied the team with the efficiency that had made him legendary among the SEAL community. "Rodriguez, demo charges on the main support struts. Kim, rig the fuel depot for detonation. Park, help me extract the surviving researchers. Falcon, get us an exit strategy." But as they moved to implement the evacuation plan, Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up something that made her freeze in terror. The organic heartbeat sound wasn't coming from the research station at all. It was coming from beneath them, from deep within the planet's crust. The dig site hadn't just awakened a few sleeping creatures. It had awakened something vast and ancient that had been dormant for millions of years. The ground began to shake as something massive stirred in the depths below. Through the resin-covered walls, Sarah could see bioluminescent patterns spreading like wildfire through underground networks that stretched for kilometers in every direction. The research station wasn't just a nest. It was a single cell in an organism the size of a continent. "My God," Park whispered, her xenobiological scanners painting a picture of the true horror they faced. "The entire planet is alive. This isn't a colony, it's a single massive entity." That's when Sarah understood the real reason for her call sign. She didn't just have the eyes of a falcon, she had its instincts. And right now, every instinct she possessed was screaming that they needed to get off this planet before something truly apocalyptic awakened beneath their feet. The converted researchers hanging from the ceiling began to stir, their black eyes opening in unison as the planetary consciousness directed its attention toward the human interlopers. Dr. Hawthorne's voice echoed in Sarah's mind again, but this time it carried the weight of an intelligence older than human civilization. "You have caused pain to the eternal dream. Now you will become part of something greater than your limited existence." The entire research station began to shift and change as the planetary consciousness focused its attention on them. Walls flowed like liquid, restructuring themselves into new configurations that defied human understanding of physics and engineering. The resin covering everything pulsed with increased intensity, and Sarah could feel the alien intelligence probing the edges of her cybernetic defenses with renewed determination. "The shuttle," Morrison barked into his comm. "Rodriguez, get to the shuttle and prep for immediate dust-off." But even as Rodriguez sprinted toward the exit, the station's main airlock began sealing itself with organic growth that hardened into an impenetrable barrier. They were trapped inside a living building that was rapidly becoming something else entirely. Sarah's tactical computer was screaming warnings as it analyzed the structural changes occurring around them. The station wasn't just being consumed, it was being improved. The alien consciousness was learning from human technology, incorporating their engineering principles into its own organic architecture. If this intelligence ever reached Earth, humanity's technological advantages would mean nothing. "Park, what's the status on those survivors?" Sarah called out while maintaining overwatch on the unconscious creatures. "Two of them are too far gone. The conversion process has replaced most of their nervous systems," Park replied grimly. "But Dr. Hawthorne still has enough human neural tissue left that I might be able to sever her connection to the collective." The medic was already working with a neural disruptor designed to break psychic links, but Sarah could see the strain on her face. The alien consciousness wasn't just connected to Hawthorne's mind. It was woven through every cell of her body like a biological computer virus. That's when Kim's voice crackled over the comm from the engineering section. "Chief, you need to see this. I found what the eggheads were really studying down here, and it's not good." Sarah and Morrison fought their way through the shifting corridors to reach Kim's position. The demolitions expert had breached a hidden chamber beneath the main dig site, and what they found there redefined their understanding of the threat they faced. The chamber was filled with what looked like technological artifacts, but they were clearly organic in nature, living machines that pulsed with their own internal light. "These aren't fossils," Kim explained, his voice tight with fear. "They're some kind of hibernation pods, and according to my readings, there are thousands of them extending deep into the planet's crust." Sarah's enhanced vision analyzed the alien technology with growing horror. Each pod contained something that registered as partially alive on their scanners, but the energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases. These weren't just sleeping creatures. They were something far more dangerous. They're ships, she realized with dawning comprehension. Or pilots, or both. This isn't a planet-sized organism. It's a staging ground for an invasion force that's been waiting millions of years for the right moment to wake up. Morrison's expression hardened as the implications sank in. How many? Sarah's computer was still calculating, but the preliminary numbers were staggering. Conservative estimate, several million individual entities, each one roughly equivalent to a small spacecraft in terms of combat capability, if they all wake up. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The assembled SEALs understood exactly what they were looking at, the advance force for a species that could devour entire civilizations. And humanity had just stumbled into their nest. The converted Dr. Hawthorne's voice echoed through the chamber with an otherworldly resonance. You begin to understand. Your species shows promise, but you lack the discipline for true unity. You will be improved, as we have improved countless others across the galaxy. That's when Park's neural disruptor finally achieved a breakthrough. Dr. Hawthorne screamed as the alien influence was partially severed from her mind, her black eyes flickering between human and alien consciousness. In those brief moments of clarity, she managed to gasp out crucial information. The activation sequence requires conscious intent from a compatible species. They can't wake up without willing participation from an intelligent race. That's why they preserve some of us, to serve as guides and translators. Sarah understood immediately. The alien intelligence couldn't fully activate its invasion force without human cooperation. It needed converted humans to interface with technologies that had been dormant for geological ages. That's why they'd been hurting the SEALs instead of simply killing them. The aliens needed their minds intact for the awakening process. We need to destroy this chamber, Morrison decided instantly, if we can prevent them from completing the activation sequence. But Kim was already shaking his head. Chief, the energy readings from these pods are off the charts. My demo charges wouldn't even scratch them. We'd need a nuclear warhead to make a dent, and even then. The station shuddered as something massive moved in the depths below. Through the organic walls, they could see bioluminescent networks lighting up across the planetary surface like a vast neural network coming online. Other sites were responding to the disturbance at the research station, and Sarah realized that their presence had already triggered a chain reaction that might be unstoppable. Rodriguez's panicked voice crackled over the comm. Chief, we've got problems up here. The shuttle's being attacked by some kind of flying creatures, and there's movement at multiple sites across the continent. Whatever we did down there, it's waking up everything else. Sarah's Falcon instincts were screaming now, but not with fear, with tactical clarity. They couldn't stop the awakening, but they could still prevent the aliens from getting what they really needed. The converted humans weren't just translators. They were the key to controlling the invasion force. Without willing human cooperation, the aliens would have a chaotic mass of individual entities instead of a coordinated military force. Chief, I've got a plan, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. But you're not going to like it, and it requires someone to stay behind to implement it. Morrison's eyes met hers, and she saw understanding dawn in his expression. He knew exactly what she was proposing and why it had to be her. Her cybernetic implants made her the only one capable of interfacing with the alien technology long enough to corrupt their control systems from within. Falcon, that's a direct order to stand down. Sorry, Chief. Sometimes you have to disobey orders to complete the mission. Sarah was already moving toward the central pod cluster, her enhanced reflexes carrying her past Morrison's attempt to stop her. She could feel the alien consciousness pressing against her defenses with renewed fury, but her neural firewalls were holding. For now. Sarah's hands found the central control interface of the alien pod cluster, a writhing mass of organic circuitry that pulsed with ancient intelligence. The moment she made contact, the full weight of the planetary consciousness crashed against her neural defenses like a digital tsunami. Her cybernetic implants screamed warnings as alien code attempted to overwhelm her human mind. But Sarah had spent years training with military cybernetics, learning to merge human intuition with machine precision. Instead of fighting the alien intrusion, she embraced it, allowing the consciousness to flow into her systems while she simultaneously pushed her own code deeper into the alien network. It was like wrestling with a hurricane, but her Falcon instincts guided her through the chaos. The alien intelligence was vast and ancient beyond human comprehension, but it had one crucial weakness. It had never encountered hybrid organic cybernetic consciousness before. It didn't know how to process a mind that was part human intuition and part digital logic. Sarah's dual nature created feedback loops that rippled through the planetary network, introducing chaos into billions of years of perfect order. Through the connection, she could sense the scope of what they faced. This wasn't just one planet. It was part of a network that stretched across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds served as staging grounds for invasion forces that had consumed countless civilizations over millions of years. Each conquest added new biological templates to their collective knowledge, making them stronger and more adaptable. But humanity represented something they'd never encountered before, a species that had achieved spaceflight without losing individual consciousness. Most races either remained primitive or achieved unity through collective intelligence. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerously creative. The aliens needed to understand human consciousness before they could properly assimilate it. Falcon, Morrison's voice seemed to come from a vast distance. Whatever you're doing, the pods are starting to activate. Sarah could feel it too, the awakening minds stirring in their hibernation chambers, responding to her presence in their network. But she was already deep in their control systems, her consciousness spreading like a virus through pathways that hadn't been designed for hybrid minds. Every connection she made introduced more chaos into their perfect order. The alien intelligence tried to eject her from the network, but it was too late. Sarah's human unpredictability had already corrupted core protocols that had remained unchanged for geological ages. The awakening entities received conflicting commands, contradictory data streams, and impossible instructions that turned their perfect coordination into confused chaos. Through her enhanced vision, she watched the pods begin opening in random sequences instead of the carefully orchestrated awakening that had been planned. Some entities emerged too early and collapsed from system shock. Others remained dormant despite activation signals. The precise timing that would have created an organized invasion force dissolved into pandemonium. But the effort was destroying her. Sarah could feel her human consciousness fragmenting under the strain of containing an intelligence designed for planetary-scale thinking. Her neural implants were burning out one by one, their circuits overloaded by data flows that no human technology had been designed to handle. "Get out of here," she managed to shout through the psychic chaos. "The whole planet is going to convulse when this hits the deep networks." Morrison grabbed Dr. Hawthorne's partially conscious form, while Park and Kim provided covering fire against the creatures that were still functional. The station was dissolving around them as the alien consciousness lost control of its own infrastructure, walls flowing like water and support structures growing in impossible directions. Rodriguez had somehow managed to clear the shuttle of hostile entities, and his voice crackled over the comm with desperate urgency. "Chief, I can hold position for 30 seconds, but then we need to go. The atmosphere is starting to change." Sarah felt the moment when her sabotage reached the deep planetary networks. The alien consciousness convulsed in digital agony as billions of years of accumulated knowledge became infected with human chaos. The perfect unity that had allowed them to coordinate across galactic distances shattered into fragments that would take centuries to repair. The planet itself began to shake as confused awakening entities triggered geological instabilities. Ancient hibernation chambers collapsed as their occupants emerged in random panic instead of ordered deployment. The invasion force that should have been humanity's doom became a chaotic mess of individual creatures with no coordination or leadership. But Sarah's consciousness was fragmenting too rapidly now. She could feel herself dissolving into the alien network, her human identity scattering across pathways designed for collective intelligence. In her final moments of clarity, she managed one last act of defiance. She transmitted every detail of human military tactics, technology, and psychology directly into the alien collective memory, but corrupted with logic bombs and recursive loops that would make the information useless. "Tell command," she whispered through failing vocal cords, "the threat is neutralized but not destroyed. They'll need decades to reorganize, maybe centuries. Humanity has time to prepare." Morrison's anguished voice was the last thing she heard with her human ears. "Falcon, Sarah, don't you dare give up on us." But Sarah Chen was beyond hearing now. Her consciousness had spread too far into the alien network to ever return to a single human body. Yet something of her remained, a ghost in the machine that would continue to introduce chaos into alien coordination for years to come. Every time they tried to restore perfect order, her scattered digital essence would create new disruptions, new uncertainties that made their collective intelligence less effective. The shuttle lifted off from Kepler 442b just as the planet entered convulsions that would last for months. Behind them, millions of awakening entities struggled with confused programming and contradictory instincts. Some would eventually achieve individual consciousness and break free from the collective entirely. Others would remain trapped in recursive loops, endlessly trying to resolve impossible paradoxes that human chaos had introduced into their perfect logic. The SEAL team returned to Earth with Dr. Hawthorne and crucial intelligence about the galactic threat humanity faced. But they also carried something else, the knowledge that one of their own had sacrificed herself not just to save her team, but to buy her entire species the time they needed to prepare for the larger war that was coming. They called her Falcon because of her incredible vision and predatory instincts. But in the end, she proved that the most dangerous thing about humanity wasn't their ability to see threats coming. It was their willingness to dive directly into the heart of darkness to protect those they loved. The aliens had conquered countless civilizations, but they'd never faced anything like human sacrifice paired with cybernetic innovation. Sarah Chen had shown them something that would haunt their collective consciousness for generations, that sometimes the prey becomes the predator,